Welcome to The Talent Journey, a video podcast where a talent outsider like me asks dumb questions so you don't have to. Along the way, we'll learn about the stories of how our talent leader guests got where they are today and pick up nuggets of wisdom from their experience that you can use in your own journey to become a better recruiter, employer brander, and talent leader. I'm your host, Justin Vajko, and today we're talking with Ted Keyport. Ted Keyport is the principal at Keyport Technical Search, an engineering/skilled trade headhunting firm based out of the Twin Cities. He's an expert in machining and metal forming businesses, but recruits actively across manufacturing. He's got a decade of experience recruiting in this area, and Ted's network is expansive, and he's a very valuable person to know. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Doing what you do as a recruiter, it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, is because you have a very, very specific scope. Like you said earlier, industrial manufacturing, machinists, things like that. But tell me about your approach in the Twin Cities area and what you're trying to build.
I don't know if your listeners know what CNC machining is, or what machining is. It's a type of manufacturing process that's pretty technical. The machinists, the people that do this work, are very, very highly skilled. It's a trade, right? It's like being an electrician or being a plumber or whatever, right? So essentially what I've done is I picked a skilled trade, specifically machining, and my goal is to be the guy for that here. So if you're looking to hire a machinist, you have to talk to Ted, and there's no other way to find somebody. I want to not gatekeep it necessarily, but position myself along that road, right, to hiring machinists and be the one to give directions. The reason why there's a business to be built here is because machinists are not available, right, from a talent perspective. If you're going to hire somebody like this, you can't go on Indeed. You can't go on LinkedIn. Sure, there's people on Indeed, and sure, there's people on LinkedIn, but there's not very many. And the vast majority of people in that space are not computer people. So if you want to talk to those people, the only way you can do that is if you have a network in that space. Somebody's got to give you their phone number, right? So I position myself as having those relationships. I spent a lot of time talking to people in that world, and I built a network that I can draw candidate profiles out of, right? So everybody knows somebody that would like to have a shorter commute or make more money or a different shift or whatever. And they know to pass those people to me, and I can sort of distribute them out to good shops that'll treat them well and give them good benefits and stuff. So it's beneficial for the candidates to refer their people to me. But in addition to that, I do a lot of work with the community colleges in town. And the idea there is I want to place every single kid that graduates from these tech school programs every year, because there's not many kids that are going to school for this right now. So I want to place every single one of these kids. And then the idea is over the years, as they sort of grow in their careers, they're going to rely on me for hiring. If they move into a hiring position, if they get laid off or something, it's nice to have somebody you can call that you know and you trust, that has your best interests at heart and knows your industry intimately well. And so if I'm spending, the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years focusing in on this one niche and being the guy in this one thing, at a certain point, I'm going to hit critical mass. And once I've hit critical mass, I don't really have to do any work anymore, right? I mean, I just have companies that reach out to me, cold, and I have candidates that are referred to me cold. And it's just purely through the work that I did 5, 10 years ago, building these relationships with people earlier on in their careers.
I think it's a fascinating approach because in the world of recruiting, I think that's a very rare thing. It's why I wanted to get you on, Ted. You have a different mentality or perspective than I think most recruiters would consider.
Yeah, well, and this is part of how, recruiting, it can be in some ways like a little bit of not a dangerous, but like there's very clear ceilings to it, right? I mean, you can go into agency recruiting and maybe you move into management within agency recruiting, maybe you don't, but you're going to be, eating what you kill your whole career doing that, right? And there's a lot of people that get into agency recruiting and the goal is just to go in and make money, and that's their whole objective, and that's all they want to do with it, right? Then you have people that go the corporate recruiting route, and they go to work for a corporation, but there's only so far you can climb within that, you can climb to recruiting manager, and then you can climb to recruiting director, and then you can pivot from that into HR. And there's tons of cool and exciting things you can do in HR with a recruiting background, right? But you're as a recruiter, your recruiting skills are really only as good as your hiring managers, are only as good as the amount of money your company wants to pay. You don't have control over very much, and it's kind of a dead end. Where for me, the way I'm thinking about this is like, I'm going to be doing this in 10 years. I'm going to be doing this exact same thing I'm doing right now. Literally the exact same job. It's just going to be easier because I've hit critical mass, and it's snowballed to the point where the relationships are in place, and I'm just fielding referrals, and I'm answering the phone when companies call me.
Yeah. So Ted, what's your zone of genius, skill or way of thinking that comes naturally to you and has helped you get here?
I don't know if this would qualify as a zone of genius, but I'm pretty outcome agnostic when it comes to these searches. I think of the trap a lot of people in my industry fall into is they get really, really mad when a candidate does something stupid, right? Like if I find somebody and I present them with the job, and it is a great job, like a genuinely awesome career move for that person, comp is above market, more work-life balance, better culture, whatever it is. And then that candidate goes and takes a counteroffer. A lot of people in my world get really mad at them. They get really frustrated. It's like, why do you not see this thing that I see, that it's so blindingly obvious that you should have taken this job? But for me, the way I think about this is less on the results of the outcome and what happened, and more on just the very, very simple idea of, am I showing value? Right? Am I showing value to this person? Am I showing value to this company? From the company's perspective, Ted brought us someone we wanted to hire, right? They're happy with me. I did my job. I'm not here to land people. I'm here to find them for you, right? And from the candidate's perspective, I brought them to a company, and I was available, and I answered the phone, and I was willing to, work with them and whatever their needs were, and I was responsive, whatever it is that they needed. Ted was there to provide in from a recruiter relationship perspective. And it didn't work out, but that's not Ted's fault, right? It's not Ted's fault that you took a counteroffer. And what a lot of times happen in these situations is I'll get referrals from that candidate because I didn't hassle them when they said they were taking a counter. It's like, okay, well, good luck. It's totally cool. Don't feel upset or anything. I'll let them know. I'll let them down easy. It's all fine. And then I call the company and it's, sorry, this happened. We'll start over. We'll find somebody else. And I'll get the candidate will be so thrilled that this wasn't such a miserable experience and I didn't yell at them, that they'll refer people to me. Right. And the company is a lot of times I can use this as what did we do wrong? How did we not land this person? Was it that we weren't aggressive enough in comp? Was it that what was the counteroffer that we lost to? Did they just pay him more? Did they offer him the promotion that they had been asking for, or whatever it was? How can we alter our interview process so that we don't lose candidates in the way that we lost this particular person? And that coaching of the company actually makes it easier for the next candidate coming through the pipeline, because now the company's better equipped to hire and the candidates has an easier interviewing experience.
If I could summarize it, is you're able to be detached from the outcome in a healthy way that allows you to let the candidate go have a good experience. And then also, side effect, allows you to give positive feedback to the employer about how they can improve, which ultimately makes your job easier. Watching this, they're thinking, well, how do you have that much confidence? I mean, these things can take forever, take weeks sometimes, right. But you're making a good point. You've chosen to work in a niche that moves quickly.
Well, and I think this is very possible to have this headspace in a niche that moves slower too. You just have to have a good pipeline going. And this is something I talk to candidates about. Like I had a good buddy of mine was just laid off from his job, and he calls me on the way home, and he's really, really upset. And I gave him some just like regular coaching about how you handle a layoff, and there's a heavy emotional component to that, right? When going through losing your livelihood like that in a shocking, unexpected way. But talking to him, what I told him is what you need to get to with your job search is an abundance mentality. You need to feel like with every interview you go into that you don't need this job. It would be great, it would be nice, but you don't need it because you have 2 other interviews scheduled this week for 2 other different jobs. And until you get an offer letter, you're for sale here. You're available. So you need to just keep grinding. Even if you're like right on the precipice of a new job, you need to keep applying and keep talking to people and keep getting your name out there, because you never know. You might not get it. You might come in second place with the job, or the offer might be awful, right? And you can't afford to take the job, in which case, if you had slowed down your search, you're going to be upset by it. So, and the same thing is true for recruiting, right? You have to keep grinding all the time, or you have to keep, maybe grinding is the wrong word, but you have to keep sort of churning is the way that I think of it. You have to keep churning. You have to keep talking to people. You have to keep talking to companies. You have to keep talking to clients. Even if you're crazy busy in the contingent world, you can never really stop or slow down, because when you take your foot off the pedal, it's a lot of work to build that momentum back up.
Well, tell me, Ted, was there ever a time you failed? And if so, what did that teach you, and how has that shaped your life?
Jumping back to that abundance mentality and that sort of confidence piece. Early in my career, I had a candidate where the example I gave where, candidates given the right job and they should have taken it, and it was blindingly obvious to me. So, and this guy was like a technician level, and he wanted to move into an engineering role, right? And that was his goal. That was why he was on the market and why I was talking to him. So I bring him into this company. He interviews, super cool work. They're doing all sorts of really, really high tech stuff. And he gets an offer, and it's the number he asked for. And he's like waffling. He's like, I don't know. I don't really want to do this. I feel like I have a bad feeling. It doesn't feel like the right thing. And it was like, from a career perspective on the resume, it was a great move for him. It was super high technology. It was an engineer title. They had a path towards leadership. The money was great. It was so obvious to me that this guy needs to do this. So I called him up and I basically talked him into it. I was like, look, this is a great opportunity. What are you worried about? And I just kept talking to him until he agreed to take the job. And he lasted about 6 months, right? This is actually what a lot of companies will expect you to do. Right? I want you to persuade people to do things. I want you to persuade them to take this job. I want you to convince them, cajole them, whatever it is, so that they come work for me. And that's what I'm paying you to do. And when this happened, I did that for this company, for my boss, who was expecting me to convince this guy to do this. And it didn't work out because it actually wasn't a good fit for that dude. It just wasn't. And I had forced it through, and I've never done that again. You can't, in this world, when it comes to people's hiring decisions, no matter what their decision is, no matter how stupid or ridiculous they're being, you have to respect that decision. It's not up to you. You're not the one that's there every day at work. It's not my job to persuade people to do things. All I can do is present a true vision of, here's this person, warts and all, and here's this job, warts and all. And I'm going to be upfront with the person about what sucks about this job, and I'm going to be upfront with this company about what sucks about this person. And if you guys like each other at the end of that, then this is a good pairing. Let's go. Let's get an interview. But if you don't, it's better to have it fall apart early rather than spend 3 rounds of interviews on something that we all know is going to fail within a year.
Love that. There's a very refreshing perspective you bring to the table here, Ted. It's not something we often hear about in the world of recruiting. So last question for you, Ted. Let's think back on your younger self. What's one bit of advice you'd give your younger self?
I would probably, I go back to that guy that I talked into that job. That was a big mistake. It's your job. Basically, I would tell him is your job is not to convince anybody to do anything. Despite what everyone tells you, what you hear, and what you imagine. That's not what you're here to do. You're here to just make the introduction. The minute you start talking people into things, the minute you're having to do replacements. It's just far, far, far better to hear people out, hear where they are, and just if they're not a good fit, then you move on to the next person that is, and you just keep doing that until you find the right fit. And if you do that, you'll get that company will want to work with you again, and that candidate will introduce you to their friends.
All right, Ted. Well, if somebody is listening to this, watching this, and they want to learn more about you, where can they go? What can they do?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Always glad to mentor and work with people in the industry.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ted. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Journey podcast with your host, Justin Vajko. To learn more about Dialogue, visit recruitwithdialogue.com.